So welcome to today's episode of Loops. For those who are not familiar with Loops, this is a live webinar series committed to spotlight innovation in the field of circular economy. I am Luca Polidori, the Secretary General of Velta, and I'm here to host the episode. Today, we are going to speak about photovoltaics with two Horizon 2020 projects, CIRCUSOL and SUPER PV. Since 2017 alone, the solar photovoltaic capacity additions installed in the European Union more than quadrupled. More and more houses and buildings are getting photovoltaics installed on their roofs, as well as some photovoltaics energy sites are getting set up. The region state, for example, of Baden-Württemberg in Germany, made it on the 1st of May 2022 mandatory for all new buildings to have photovoltaics installed on the roofs. From January 2023, it will be mandatory as well to install photovoltaics on all buildings if the house gets a roof renovation. More and more states and regions and countries are focusing on sustainable energy sources and driving forward legislation to bring them on the plate. That's the reason why we are speaking today, in today's episode, about photovoltaics. The CIRCUSOL project lies its focus on the development and implementation of circular business models within the photovoltaics industry, where Super PV aims to secure photovoltaics production in Europe while cutting down costs. The representative of CIRCUSOL is Dr. Tom Romans. He is a project coordinator and a researcher at Vito. Good afternoon, Professor Romans. Can you please present yourself?
Good afternoon, Luca. I'm not a professor, but thank you for this kind introduction. I'll share my screen if everything goes well. Screen. Yeah, I hope this goes well. All right. I hope this is okay. So indeed, I'm representing CIRCUSOL. CIRCUSOL is a project, a Horizon 2020 project on circular business models for the solar power industry. Who are we? We are a consortium of 15 partners, all from all over Europe and representing all the stakeholders in the solar PV supply chain, so to say, and also some research institutions and partners from academia as well, of course. And we are exploring circular business models for the solar power industry. Now, why is that important? Of course, as you all know, solar power is booming. Just some figures to illustrate this. In 2021, globally, another 156 gigawatts was installed. And in the EU alone, this means that we installed in that year only 25 gigawatts. And this pace of deployment is always going to increase. So also in the coming years, we expect at least the same amount of panels to be installed. And of course, well, we all want renewable energy. We will need all renewable energy that we can get just to achieve our climate goals, for example. But yeah, renewable energy, it doesn't come without materials, of course. To illustrate this, I just plotted here a graph where the material content of a PV panel per square meter is shown. It's a silicium-based panel. It's just a generic model of a panel. But these are like average figures, which are still applicable today. If you take 1 square meter of solar panel, you have like 13 kilograms of material. Most of it is glass. There's also an aluminium frame. There's some plastics, and then there's silicon and some metals in the solar cells. That's for just 1 square meter of panel. If you extrapolate this in a very simple calculation, you get a rough estimation of the total amount of materials that is added to this huge stock of PV panels that are installed in Europe. That's the table on the right. If you just extrapolate these figures, you get like huge amounts of glass and silicon and aluminium that we install each year in Europe just to get all this renewable energy. Basically, all these materials are, most of them are imported in Europe because most of the PV panels are just coming from the east. And then the question, of course, is what about these materials, and more particularly, how are we going to deal with all the waste once these PV panels are going to be decommissioned? It's a question that exists already for quite some time. People have been thinking of this, and there's all kinds of scenarios that show that from now onwards, we expect these first panels, the first generation of panels, to be decommissioned, and the waste is going to come. Well, there's different scenarios. It could come very quickly. It could take some more time, but well, basically, we know that at one point in time, in the coming 10 to 20 years, we will be facing a huge amount of materials coming back from all these PV panels. And then what can we do with that? We can just recycle everything. That's one possibility, which is a circular solution, of course. We're all happy with that. But are we going to really succeed in that? And is all this recycling really going to recover all the precious materials that are in these PV panels? Well, we're not really confident at this time because there's a lot of technologies available, but not all of these are financially or economically viable, we know. And then the solution that was proposed in our project proposal was also to look into these other inner cycles of the circular economy. What do we mean with inner cycles? It's the cycles where you don't crush and recycle the panels, but where you try to make use of the products as they are, just by repairing them, or try to remanufacture them, refurbish them, and use them for other applications maybe, or in other sectors or other market segments. I don't know. There's a lot of possibilities. And a second thing which we were well having as a hypothesis was that all these new types of reuse, recycling, refurbishing, they could be supported by product service systems. So basically, if you just don't sell the PV panels to the end users, but keep them in the hands of a product service provider, you would expect that it's in the end easier to have a better grip also on the materials when they become waste, and you could better organize all these other cycles as well. So that's the kind of model that we explored in the CIRCUSOL project. We did a lot of analysis of the PV ecosystem. We looked into PV panel design. We looked into how the supply chain is organized, what kind of business models are out there in the PV sector. And we validated our ideas in 5 large-scale demonstrator projects. So we really tried to realize new types of business models in these demonstrators, where we also played with Second Life PV panels, and we even added Second Life lithium-ion batteries from electrical cars used in the Second Life as stationary batteries. A lot of results, because we're now in the 4th year, so we are near the end and we're really compiling all the results. It's too much to discuss here. If you're interested, please have a look at our website. For today, I'm just going to focus on a couple of lessons learned, and these are related to the reuse case for solar PV. So not related to recycling, but related to reuse. The question was, is reuse or extending the lifetime of a PV panel, is that environmentally desirable? Secondly, is it economically feasible? Third, is there societal desirability? And then I will conclude with just some steps towards more circularity in the PV sector. First question, does PV reuse make sense from an environmental perspective? why this question, or where does it come from? Well, a lot of people have this idea that replacing old panels by new ones is maybe desirable because new panels are more efficient. You would also expect that maybe the production process of these new panels is nowadays less environmentally the burden of the environmental burden of new production processes is lower nowadays, and also recycling would be more environmentally friendly. So for all these reasons, some people say that, well, maybe it's good to replace older panels by new ones, and the additional environmental burden that you will cause by doing so will be relieved by the fact that your installation will be more efficient. But what we have seen is that this is not true. Here on this graph, you see 3 scenarios. The first scenario is where you have an installation for 30 years and you would replace every 10 years the panels by new and more efficient, maybe more environmentally friendly panels. The second case in the middle is where you would replace panels every 15 years, so only once in these 30 years. And then the third case is where you just leave the panels as they are for 30 years and you use them for their whole technical lifetime. You just keep the original panels and you just see what happens. And then you can calculate the environmental impact per kilowatt hour produced for this installation in terms of CO2 emissions. And you could even distinguish between several cases for each of these scenarios where you have hypotheses related to the improvement of the panels, so the peak power improvement, and also scenarios about the improvement of recycling processes. So the first, the second, and the third bar in each of the scenarios. But what you see is, and the main message here is that just leaving the installation for 30 years and using these original panels for their whole lifetime is just the most environmentally friendly solution, because there you have the lowest impact per kilowatt hour produced. And the fact that these panels nowadays are much more efficient and maybe environmentally more friendly than they were 30 years ago, that will not offset the additional environmental burden that you introduce by replacing these panels. That's one thing. If you want to know more about this, it was published in an IEA report, and you find the reference here on this slide. A second exercise that we did, and that was published also in the same report, is the business case for Second Life PV panels. And there what we see is that, well, it's not that simple. Second Life is not achievable, not financially viable in any case. And well, to make a long story short, the conclusion was that it's only feasible or only viable for relatively young panels, and that means something like less than 5 years old, and panels which have still have a rather long remaining lifetime and have a high remaining power density. So for relatively young panels, let's say you have an installation and there's a storm that destroyed part of the installation, but it was a rather new installation, and you have to replace some of the panels. Well, for these panels, well, of course, they still have a future as Second Life panels. But for an installation which is really end of life, end of technical life, where panels are 15, 20, 30 years old, it doesn't really make sense from an economical perspective to try to market these panels or as Second Life panels just to be used in another installation. So here, well, under the current market circumstances, it doesn't always make sense to try to reuse panels as Second Life panels. And then thirdly, about societal perspective. Well, of course, if we could support this circular economy also in the PV sector. If we would find new uses for second life panels, new market segments where second life PV would make sense, if we could increase recycling and really try to recycle and reuse this huge mass of PV waste that is upcoming, that could, of course, result in a lot of additional jobs in the first place. Our partner PV Cycle calculated that this could be somewhere between 50 and 150 jobs in the EU. Another effect would be that you could, by marketing or giving a new use to second life panels, maybe even in off-grid installations, you could alleviate energy poverty, for example, in low-income countries. If you think of that, well, there's a lot of possibilities still out there besides just trying to recycle these panels. So that's already a lot of information. I think I will end with some general lessons that we've learned from our project so far. First of all, we believe that we should enhance design for circularity and recovery of critical raw materials. That's for sure. We should support preparation for reuse as well, and therefore we need a regulatory framework, and we also need clear specifications and testing procedures for second life PV. And that's also the reason why within CIRCUSOL we have worked a lot on standardization of testing for second life. We have been working in the standardization committees, the IEC committees for PV and for battery, to put there on the agenda the testing procedures for second life uses of PV and batteries. Then thirdly, we believe that there's a need to establish data collection and sharing procedures. So if we want to really maximize recycling and reuse in the future, we will have to be more transparent within the supply chain, and therefore new concepts like product passports, they could support, in our opinion, PV recycling and the second life market. Then there's still some administrative barriers for product as a service systems and new business models that we still have to address. Innovation is always a bit difficult in the beginning, and there's always some barriers just because of the existing system, which is not adapted to these new ideas. We have found quite early in the project already that it's very important to find the right market segment for second life PV. Second life use is not just a solution, a simple solution which is applicable to whatever market segment here in the PV market. So we think there are specific use cases where there's definitely a future for second life PV. If you, for example, think of off-grid applications and off-grid installations, or new types of solar PV, like or new sectors like the agrivoltaics sector, there it could maybe be possible to not only use new panels but also second life panels. And then finally, one of the reasons why we think it's important to better organize the recycling and the reuse market for PV is that we want to avoid that a lot of decommissioned panels would disappear into low-income countries or developing countries where, first of all, we use a lot of we lose a lot of materials. I have shown you that this huge stock of PV panels, it represents a lot of materials that we could use in Europe. And secondly, also, if we just export PV waste, and well, we say maybe, or what you see today is that there's a market, or there are players in the market that export PV waste to these low-income countries where the materials are maybe partly recycled, but where we know that most of it just ends up in a landfill. And by doing so, we just export environmental issues towards these countries, and we think we should try to stop that. So that's also another aspect of this research and this project that I think is quite important. Okay, that's it for now. If you want to know more, just follow us on Twitter and LinkedIn. We also have some videos on YouTube. We have a policy workshop that we will organize the 29th of September. And we have a final event somewhere in November. I hope to meet you there. Thank you very much. For any other questions, just I refer to the discussion afterwards, or you can contact me via email. Now I go back to Luca. And I stop.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Romans. It was a very interesting presentation, very interesting slides and data shared with us. I think it's very interesting to see that indeed from a sustainability and societal point of view, it's most of the times convenient to reuse. I was wondering when I saw the slide about the economic situation, which indeed is the one where you say, okay, here not so often we don't, it becomes costful to reuse. How is the photovoltaic industry adapting, if they are adapting to the right to repair legislation? Because that's what many products. But this is what made many products also economical, sustainable to reuse, right? I think to a smartphone, for example, they start to say, okay, but people must be able to reuse them also when broken in a very easy and they should have repair points. They should have there should be an ecosystem and also some subsidies to let them reuse that. So is it adapting, and if so, how? And can more be done on that to make it economical, sustainable in the future?
First remark on the reuse case. I think we started from a very simple approach, only thinking of, well, you have an installation, utility scale, for example. Part of it is decommissioned, and then you ask yourself, is it economically viable to put this part of the installation somewhere else and give it a second life? And that's like the case that we've explored, and there you see that's not really, that doesn't really make sense from a business perspective, which wasn't really a surprise in the end. But the main lesson there was that if we talk about reuse, we shouldn't just think of these very simple cycles where you just reuse the PV panels and new PV panels in totally the same market segment and in the same application. There's a lot of things in between, and that's where you should look for the reuse cases. So one of our partners, for example, is producing charging modules for e-bikes and e-steps in an urban environment where you only need 2 panels. It's an off-grid installation. It doesn't really matter how efficient these panels are, how old they are, how they look like. And that's an application where Second Life could make sense. But it's totally different than just a utility scale PV installation. That's the first lesson from this this exercise. Secondly, what should we do to make it more feasible even? Well, you see that a large part of the cost is just the testing and repair. If repair is necessary nowadays, most often it's not feasible just because you just have to put too much work in it. And also in terms of monitoring, it's important to have an idea of how these panels perform. So also there, one of the messages is if we would have a system where we could more easily have an idea of the performance of panels which are there out in the field and which should, well, have to be decommissioned for some reason, then again that's a reduction in the costs, because nowadays, if you have to find out for yourself how this panel is performing, just as it is in the field there, and you don't have any data, it becomes difficult. So circular economy, there's a huge need of data to realize it, I think, and that's not only here in the PV sector, but it's also in other sectors. You see that it's, well, circularity can be very much supported by better data and more transparency and sharing of data.
Yes, indeed. Thank you very much. Moving forward to Super PV, which is being represented by Dr. Juras Ulbikas, project coordinator and senior researcher at the ProTech, but also founder and CEO at the Met Group and founder of Met Solar, which is a custom solar module manufacturing company from Lithuania. But also represented by Dr. Alexander Ulyashin, senior researcher scientist at Sintef, which is an industry in Norway. So it's a company, it's an industrial company in Norway. Hi everyone. Can you please present yourself and present your project?
Okay. You want also Alexander to present himself? Maybe we can start from Alexander.
Yes, if you can just present yourself, and then of course one of you can lead the presentation.
Okay. Yes, Alexander, maybe you can start.
You are muted.
Right.
Yes.
So I'm working for Sintef, which is the largest organization, research center actually in Scandinavia. And in this project, we are focusing on recycling of end-of-life panels. And we are trying to develop technological approaches to extract valuable materials, critical materials from end-of-life panels, and to estimate, how to say, cost of such processes, LCOE parameters, and so on. So therefore, we are focusing on specific technological developments. And this activity is in line with goals of Super PV, because the overall goal of Super PV will be presented by Juras, is to reduce cost of photovoltaics. And of course, recycling of valuable materials can provide some valuable options to reduce cost of PV. So this is, our main goal. And Juras will present overall goal of Super PV, which is of course is much wider than only recycling of end-of-life panels. Yeah, Juras, please.
Okay, taken from Alexander. Lucas very nicely introduced me. Thank you, Luca. I really working on 2 seats as a researcher in ProTech and as an investor and the developer of business in Met Solar. Talking about moving to solar to the Super PV project, I am trying to launch my presentation. Hopefully you see it. Do you see it?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, excellent. Actually, this is what I could say. Starting from the beginning, we are looking into PV from a completely different side, from industry side. And we're talking, first of all, about cost reduction and better performance of PV systems. This presentation was, as you see, I wanted to show that Alexander is responsible in this project for recycling part. Therefore, if you will have the special questions for recycling, Alexander is available later in the discussion. Now talking about Super PV project itself. I think you are aware about the situation in world business of PV when this sector is dominated by China producers. And our, let's say, aim and need for this project is to put back on the market and to provide competitiveness for European PV businesses. And now it is very clearly stated that not, let's say, some technological or other considerations are important mostly for this competitiveness, but so-called LCOE, it's levelized cost of electricity. And this is main target of our project, to develop superior quality PV systems which are able to compete on the market with significantly lower LCOE. As you see, our target is up to 40%, almost 40% reduction of LCOE. Project started in 2018 in May. We have really huge consortium, 26 partners, and project with extension will be ending up in 4.5 years. It means this autumn. Talking about consortium, actually we have 3 or even 4 groups of partners which are covering separate, let's say, value chain segments. It means PV module, BOS, system, and operation and maintenance related partners. And they are working particularly in this area. We have also supporting partners which are dealing with market, understanding things, marketing of our products, and dissemination, evaluation, and other things. Our approach, as in the case of consortium, also is segmented into according main segments of value chain we are addressing. We are addressing, first of all, module level activities, power electronic activities, and system level integrated activities, where we see quite nice, let's say, ideas which can bring costs significantly. And our estimations, as you see, are exactly calculated on each value chain segment, dividing impact on this value chain into LCOE. LCOE, who is, let's say, for those who are aware about this calculation, you know that there are a number of factors impacting LCOE. It's first of all capital expenditure, operational expenditure, lifetime of products, degradation level, performance ratio, and let's say we are adding as beneficiality, as additional, let's say, asset, increasing our performance of our systems. And as you see, we have some estimations where and to which extent we can have this, let's say, impact on LCOE. Methodology of project. Actually, it is following really classical way of, let's say, implementation of industrial research, when development of technological innovations are moving into industry. They are adopted on industrial level. You are making prototypes which are tested, let's say, on production, and as well in real conditions as already final PV systems. And of course, when you are testing, you are getting a number of results, enormous amount of data which you are evaluating and looking into, let's say, effect of your proposed solutions. I will not go deep into separate innovations, but I would like just to state what kind of innovations we are addressing. In model, we are addressing functional coatings, in laminate bypass diodes and light harvesting, which are, I would say, which were very, very interesting. We had a very interesting history. Because when we started this activity, we were really very innovative. But as you know, in times of karaoke capitalism, you have always, let's say, followers who are outrunning you. Therefore, today we already see competitors who are already applying these innovations in their commercial products. For power electronics, we went into, let's say, more innovative solution, targeting so-called module level power electronics. Why we were doing this? Actually, it is not significant, but is raising costs of overall PV system. But through operation and maintenance support, and other options like higher energy yield and reliability, we are gaining much more. Therefore, we think that module level electronic, it's a way forward to have maximum output of PV systems of the future. And last segment, system level innovations. We are addressing so-called PIM, which is, let's say, a little bit similar to BIM, Building Innovation, Information Modeling and Management, which is helping to construct PV systems from the very beginning with significant reduction of processing costs. And later, on the PV plant level, it is providing possibility for smart monitoring based on digital twin, when you can, let's say, model power plant performance for the next hours and next days. And this is, it's now already clear that this is very significantly is impacting business models for those who are selling PV electricity on the market. Next step, which is already implemented, is demonstration. We have a number of locations, 6 demo sites, corresponding to hot, moderate, and cold climate. And in each of these demo sites, we have systems with a number of models from several PV providers available in the project. And all sites are already running and under monitoring. We are collecting data, and seems we are, according to our first evaluation, seems we are in line with our, let's say, target values for LCOE reduction. When talking about assessment procedure, we have set of key performance indicators, which are covering solar module cost reduction, BOS components cost, total installation cost, performance ratio, reduction of life cycle costs, and one more, which is much more related with this seminar topic, recyclability and environmental footprint of solar modules. I would say that this point is really future-looking point. And actually, as you see, our project is technology-driven, and recyclability and environmental footprint of solar models is actually a topic which is dealing with technology development. It means we are looking into the next decades when, as was stated in previous presentation, we will have a really huge number of end-of-life models, and these technologies must be already available in business environment. And here I would say we're also meeting our expectations, because our partners, companies which are dealing with recycling, are already on the level of technology implementation in industrial environment for recycling of models which were so-called traditional models. Actually, it's all I would like to present about Super PV project. If you have questions, I am open for any of them. And you can follow us on our website or LinkedIn or Twitter. Okay, thank you very much. And back to...
Thank you very much for the very interesting presentation. Actually, while I was looking at the slides, I was wondering about these different demo sites. Because we're in different countries, so imagine with different climate zones, angles of sunlight, of course. Does the geographical position of the demo site has shown some difference in the performance of technologies you have been developing, and if so, what kind of factors have been influenced by that?
Yeah, okay. Actually, you're right. Each geographical location have its peculiarities, and systems are performing differently. Actually, if looking very specifically, you can say that you need to have specific technology for Africa, for Europe, or for North countries like Norway or Lithuania, which are meeting different needs. For example, in Africa, you have winds and you have sand, which is ablating PV models very strongly, and top cover glass with some additional nano coatings is really important issue to have high performance. In the north, it's not so important, because you have snow which is falling from or rain which is falling from PV panels, and you don't need to clean them. Okay, they are performing quite nice. Therefore, yes, you are right. Each technology is performing differently, and this is what we are trying to find out, how products must be modified to be suited for a particular market.
Clear. If Maximilian from the behind the scenes team can bring also the CIRCUSOL project on the screen, we can start with the open discussion. Thank you, Maximilian. Welcome back, Dr. Romans. I do have a question from the audience, which is very practical, I will say, which is asking, are your projects already influencing the photovoltaic market and or other projects? And if so, how? And I will address that to both, probably.
Yeah, maybe Tom first.
Well, are we influencing the photovoltaics market? What I noticed is that, for example, in public procurement, there's a lot of attention for circularity nowadays, and well, at least in countries like France and Belgium and the Netherlands and the Nordics and so on. So I get contacted quite regularly by public authorities that want to go for circular procurements, and they want to ask for circular PV, but they don't know what should then be the criteria. So in that sense, I also think that projects like ours are really contributing to the discussion and raising the awareness, and we can in this case, give some guidance to these authorities. So that's one thing. And then secondly, another thing is that we have worked on product service systems for PV and for battery, and you see that these things, products as a service rather than selling just the product, these types of business models, well, they are getting known more and more, I think. And I think for a certain segment of the market, there might be a future also in PV. Imagine a case where you have a young couple and they are building a house, and they are obliged nowadays, like you said in the introduction, and a lot of countries and regions, you're obliged to put PV panels on your roof. But then you have to decide in the end where to spend your last money, in the PV installation or in the new kitchen. Well, in that case, you see that these clients, they are very interested in just not doing the investment themselves, but spreading the investment over some years and just taking a product as a service and go into a lease model or something similar. So I think also there we see that there's more and more knowledge on these alternatives, and a lot of new partners in the market believe in these new models, and they will grow in the future, I'm convinced.
Okay, from the side of Super PV, how are you influencing the market, if so?
Yeah. Okay, let's say talking about results. We have confidence that these innovations went already into production. Okay, but you need to understand that in PV business you have technological, let's say, cycle of new technologies each 3-4 years maximum. Actually, when I know Lithuanian PV sector, I can say that through 10 or 15 years which are existing, we went through 3 to 4 technological cycles, upgrading technological facilities. What kind of main result of Super PV? It is mostly confidence that we can deliver a really competitive product for the market by European producers. Outcome of this, let's say, confidence is quite interesting developments. Maybe you know about such instrument as IPCEI. It is International Products of European Common Interest. And huge number of our partners are participating in this activity. Target in this activity is to bring production back to Europe on the level of gigawatt scale. Okay, our producers are quite small comparing with Chinese producers, but now we are, let's say, able to put on the table to the Commission that we can produce competitive products and to build facilities which will be real competitor to China. And this will return production into Europe. I would say it is main result of our project. It is possibility to have PV production back in Europe on the large scale. And this large scale means something like 30 gigawatt per year in 27 years. It's quite short term.
Amazing.
I can add probably a few points to what Juras said. Actually, we can provide some very concrete recommendations which are coming from monitoring activity. Since, as Juras mentioned, we have different demo sites in each country, just concrete case in Norway, we are testing 10 different types of PV panels, and we can make comparative analysis, right? And already we selected most suitable for Nordic conditions types of panels, which can be recommended to Norwegian market. And this is very important output because normally installation companies and users don't know which panels they have to use on their houses, for instance, right? And we have already database after more than 1 year monitoring, and we can recommend selected types of panels most suitable for Norwegian climate. This is very important actually because, yeah, I believe that for each climate area, it's necessary to select most suitable types of panels and install just these types of panels. And this is what is we already able to deliver for customers.
Very interesting thing, but of course also a challenge for the reuse within the same domain, I would say. We do have a last question from the audience, which is, and then I will ask you if you have a question for each other. The question is, there are several roofing projects out there, such as the Tesla solar roof, which if I remember correctly is the one where the solar cells are already integrated in the roofs. Does it make sense to install them in terms of sustainability, cost, and circularity, or is it better to use more traditional modules? I don't know if any of you can answer that or feels comfortable.
Okay, I can comment very nicely here because MedSolar is focusing on roof tiles. I quite well know this market. Actually, it is a twofold issue. Okay, one is that of course, when you have so-called building applied PV, it means when regular modules are integrated on top of already finished roof. Okay, you have let's say twofold costs. You are building your roof, and later you are building your PV system. If your building integrated, it means roof tiles, okay, are on the level of all over, then these two segments of cost for your roof, then it is even economically much more feasible. Okay, even if you have, let's say, on the same level, it is coming another dimension, visual appearance. You have much more nicely looking roof, and tiles manufacturers are PV tiles manufacturers are working on let's say design which is providing this traditional view for your roof. Okay, especially in some historical environments, you cannot put some as architects calling ugly PV modules on terracotta roofs. Okay, therefore I think in the very near future it will come to the very reasonable price, and building integrated PV will be one of big markets. I am really in favor. What concerns Tesla roof, yes, they are building quite traditional figure, but actually I know number of other solutions when you have much more cheaper than Tesla roof per square meter. Therefore, well, Tesla is a high segment in prices.
Makes sense. Thank you very much for the answer to that viewer. Then, yeah, now I would ask you if you have any question for each other that can be as technical as you wish. We are in the last 10 minutes of the live, so if there are any question from Super PV to CIRCUSOL or vice versa, now is the moment.
Yeah, I have a question to Tom regarding concrete, how to say, solutions which probably they are analyzing, because general estimations are sometimes too general, and from my point of view, it could be useful to take into consideration and to, how to say, estimation activity concrete technological case. Like, for instance, dismantling of panels, right? If you're talking about recycling and circular economy and so on, first step is dismantling of PV panels to extract some parts, right? Like solar cells and so on. Are you considering such options, concrete options? What is economically valuable? Which approach is valuable? Because there are a lot of approaches published in literature, and then it's not clear, right? For industry, for instance, what is the best option to dismantle PV panels? Do you have such results or recommendations, estimations? Yeah.
Well, first of all, recycling as such and recycling technology was only a small part of a work package in our project, so it wasn't really the focus. And I think for more details, in the meantime, there's a new project which has started, which you might know most probably, and that's Photorama. And they are going to look into the details of recycling techniques. The only thing that we have tested, and that was tested by Solitech, who is, by the way, also a partner in Super PV, was available techniques on the market today. Things like lead-free ribbons that make your panel more environmentally friendly, the sealants that are used to glue things together, so the glass to the cells, stuff like that. So very simple things that are already available there, and there our partner Solitech has tested well, what would be the cost for their company to make some changes in the production process to make panels more easily decomposable in the end. That's one thing. And another thing they have also tested is the feasibility of adding things like RFID tags to panels, just to make sure that they are more easily traceable. So if you would add a tag to each panel, then you could add information to the panel, and you would in the end, after all these years, also more easily well, retrieve this information if the panels have to be decommissioned. That's also a thing that they have tested, and they have also tested whether these tags, the quality of these tags that are available on the market is good enough to last for the technical lifetime of the panel. So they have done some testing together with IMEC to see if this technology is really good enough to be used for that purpose, and that was the case. So those are just a few things we have looked into, but really looking into the technologies and real changes to the panels to make them fit for disassembly, that's something we haven't done, and where I would refer to Photorama, where Solitech could give you some answers, and we're also LuxChemTech, another partner in CIRCUSOL, which is really an expert in these recycling technologies, and which is also a partner, I think, in Super PV. Well, they are also doing a lot of research on that, but I don't know the technical details for these studies.
Okay.
So yeah. I can't really give you some ready-made answers nowadays.
But it's clear. Yeah. The answer is clear. Okay, thank you.
This Futurama is also an Horizon 2020, Horizon Europe project?
Yes, it is.
Okay, then we will monitor that.
Syntef is involved in this project as well, so yeah, but it was interesting to.
Yes, we only have produced some test modules with technologies that are available. We've done some testing on aging and so on, and performance. degradation together with IMEC, but that was only a small part because the focus with us was on really the system as a whole and the business models behind the system. So that was more the focus.
Okay, clear. My point is that, since I'm a technological guy and representing Sintef Industry Institute, I'm thinking quite pragmatically that any economical estimations have to be based on concrete technological developments, right? Because it will affect final cost and results. Very general estimations are useful at certain stage, but then you have to go into details. Therefore, I have asked you about details, right? Yeah.
Yes, and of course, as this technology is still evolving, it's very difficult to make some estimations for, let's say, a point in time within 20 years. We just don't know how it will look like. And this example on the roof tiles is just illustrating this. Does it make sense to install these roof tiles? Well, there's no reason not to go into that direction, I would say. You would only hope that people that are developing these new types of applications nowadays, they would, from the start, at least think of the end of life as well. And if they do so, then they can develop a perfectly good product and a circular product, if you ask me. I don't know if it's the case with the roof tiles, but I can imagine just building integrated PV for me as well. It should have a future, of course, and it perfectly makes sense. You just combine a number of functions in one product. Why not? It's only more efficient, and if you can make it in the end also recyclable or reusable in some way, that would be the perfect world.
Yeah, that's the challenge.
Again, the answer can be, formulated by doing some exercises, right? You have to do something and then you can estimate final result and conclude whether it's effective or not, cost effective or not. So therefore, just concrete technological steps and developments are required to get clear, valuable answer. This is the point. Of course, preliminary estimations are important and so on, but then it should be followed by concrete steps, developments. This is my point. Yeah.
I think it's also a wonderful conclusion then for this episode. We have reached the 1 hour and 2 minutes for today. So I will say thank you, first of all, to all the speakers representing the two projects today. Thank you. Thank you for all the audience following us on LinkedIn, on our social, and on YouTube. And for the courageous people asking questions in the comments. And we see each other in a few weeks for the next episode of Loops. So stay tuned on the social network of Delta. And again, have a nice day to all of you. Thank you. Maximilian, you can stop the live stream.